Okay. I told them to give a hearty greeting. That wasn't particularly hearty, but they did the best they could. All right, so to our friends who are at home, hope you guys are doing well. We can't wait till you're back in class. We're going to be finishing up the introduction today as well as lesson 1. So while you're watching this video, do what you did yesterday, and you're going to be taking down notes. You're going to write down 5 things that I put up here on the screen that you think are important, and you'll turn these into me when you get back to school. So we covered yesterday the 3 laws of thought. The first law of thought was the law of identity, where we said that a statement is what? What was the law of identity? Well, now the law of identity is if a statement is true, it's true, right? So we can't say Jesus is Lord is true for you, but not true for me. If it's true, it's true. The second law was the law of excluded middle, which said a statement has to be either true or false. There's no third option. And the third law is the law of non-contradiction. A statement cannot be both true and false. It's got to be true or false. It can't be both, and it can't be neither. Statements are true or false. And these 3 laws are the foundation of all rational thinking. And these laws, I hope you guys found, were pretty obvious and not overly confusing. They seem pretty obvious, but if we didn't assume them to be true, we wouldn't be able to say anything at all. For example, if statements could be true and false, if I ask Georgia, right, let's say me and Georgia are driving somewhere, and I say, hey, Georgia, is there an 18-wheeler coming? And she says, no, there is not. Well, I hope she's telling me the truth. I hope she doesn't mean no and yes at the same time. I have to know what she means or we're going to get ran over, right? These laws mean that we are able to communicate in a way that's not confusing, in a way that's consistent. The world follows these laws, but the world is full of mystery as well. Now, when I say mystery, I don't mean Sherlock Holmes novels or magic. When I say mystery, I mean things like the Trinity, the incarnation of Christ. And that's true because God made the world and God is full of mystery as well. So what are some examples? I gave you 2, the Trinity and the incarnation. What are some things that we can't understand through logic alone? What are some things? Ben?
Maybe the meaning of life.
Okay, the meaning of life. There's no logical proof for the meaning of life. That's great. What else? What can't you logically prove or logically explain? Vandernoot?
Happiness.
Happiness. Great answer. Love. Beauty. Right? There's no logical explanation for these things, but we still believe them to be true. So here's what it says on your notes. Logic must always give way to mystery. And what I mean by that is when you have a genuine mystery, like the Trinity, for example, we don't deny the Trinity because we can't logically explain it. Because there are things, because we are creatures made and not God himself, that are beyond our ability to understand. And so when a genuine mystery comes up and collides with logic, the mystery wins. For example, I don't think Thomas Fleming would want to say, well, since I can't logically prove my parents love me, I guess they don't love me. No, he's going to let mystery conquer logic and say, my parents love me, though I can't logically prove it. But be on guard, my friends. Don't use this as a cop-out for lazy thinking. Don't just say at first, well, that sounds confusing, so I guess it's mystery, so there's no point in using logic. No, there are mysteries in this world, but there's a lot of things that we can understand if we'll just think long enough about them. But when logic and mystery collide, mystery wins and logic must give way. So here's kind of a chart of what we call logic. You can see there's 2 branches. So just so you know, you'll get to know this chart very well. This is called a genus and species chart. We'll talk about that later down the road. But you can see that the big genus is logic. And under the genus of logic, there are 2 species, informal logic and formal logic. And under the genus of informal logic, you see there are 3 species, terms, statements, and informal fallacies. In this class, we're going to study all 3 of these. We're going to study terms, which is what we're doing right now. Then we're going to study statements. And we're also going to study, if you look over here under formal logic, deduction, we're going to study categorical logic. So we'll study terms, statements, categorical logic, and informal fallacies in this class. We will not study induction. Induction is what we call the scientific method. So Ms. Simmons is teaching you induction. We'll talk about that later. And propositional logic, I don't think we'll ever do at this school. that's probably something that middle schoolers don't need to worry about. But those are the branches of logic. And we're going to study terms, statements, categorical logic, and informal fallacies. So what do all those words mean? So formal logic deals directly with proper and improper modes of reasoning. Remember, drawing conclusions from information we already have. Informal logic deals with operations of thinking that are indirectly related to reasoning, like defining terms, relating terms, relationships between statements. I'm just gonna tell you right now, if you're writing, you don't have to write. None of this is all like very high level. Don't worry about this stuff. But if you're writing, keep going. But this isn't like crucial information. I'm not going to quiz you on what does formal logic deal with. Okay, so don't worry about that so much. So formal logic divides into two main branches. Now this does matter. The first main branch of formal logic is induction. And that's reasoning to probable conclusions from examples or experience. Here's the classic example, okay? Every cat I've ever had has purred when I petted it. Therefore, probably all cats purr when petted. Now, the person who makes this statement, do they know this for sure? Have they petted every single cat on the planet? No. They're taking their experience and say, well, I've had about 5 or 6 cats in my life. They all purr. Therefore, probably all cats purr. Now, this is a made-up example, but there's actually a real example that's actually kind of humorous and just shows you how dumb people are. For a while, people thought that every swan was white. Do you know why they thought every swan was white? Because every swan they had seen was white. And therefore, they said it is most likely that all swans are white. But then one day, what did someone see? A black swan. And there goes that theory about all swans being white. That's how induction works. Induction never, ever, ever, ever yields certainty. Induction, the beloved scientific method that people like to talk about, only yields probability. I'm going to say it again. Induction never yields certainty. Induction only yields probability. Deduction, which is what we're going to study in here, means reasoning with certainty from premises to conclusions. If we can do a deductive argument right, our conclusion is not likely, our conclusion is certain. Deductive reasoning does not yield probability. Deductive reasoning yields absolute certainty. That's why I love deductive reasoning. We can be certain of our conclusions if we do it right. If we have those clear terms, true statements, and a valid argument, what we end up with is an absolutely certain conclusion. So this is a deductive argument. All dogs bark. This is a dog. Therefore, it barks. So think about it. If it's true that all dogs bark, and if it's true that this is a dog, does it have to be true that this thing barks? Yes. Is there any possible world where it could be true that all dogs bark, and it could be true that this thing in front of me is a dog, and it's false that it doesn't bark? No. That's a deductive argument, and it doesn't yield probability, it yields certainty. So you see the difference between these two arguments. An inductive argument looks at its own examples and own experience and says, this is what's probably true. Deductive arguments start with premises that are certainly true and say, okay, if A, then B, therefore C. Yes?
What if there's like an exception to like deductive reasoning? Like say, like with the dog example, all dogs bark. This is a dog, therefore it barks. What if it's a mute dog? It can't bark.
So I'm glad you brought that up, and I was counting down in my head till someone did. So when we do deductive reasoning, for example, if I said all dogs have 4 legs, okay, do all dogs literally right now have 4 legs? No, there are some 3-legged dogs. But think of it this way, is the standard model of dog that they have 3 legs or 4? 4. So we're going to deal with the standard model, okay? So obviously there are dogs that may have had damage to their vocal cords or barking cords, whatever, but we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the dogs that lost their leg to cancer or got ran over by a car. If I say all dogs have 4 legs, that's a true statement because all dogs have 4 legs. That's what they're supposed to have. If a creature has born with naturally occurring 3 legs, that's not a dog. Dogs have 4 legs. Okay, so with all of our examples, yes, you could always dig in and find some example somewhere but that's not how deductive logic works. Dogs bark. Yeah.
So you're saying if a dog's born with 3 legs, it's not a dog?
What I'm saying is if a creature is born that is only supposed to have 3 legs and only has 3 legs, that's not a dog. Dogs can be born without 4 legs, but that's not the normal way of things go, right? Like the normal dog has 4 legs. The normal dog barks. So we're going to use this as a true statement. All dogs bark. All dogs have 4 legs. Even though, yeah, we go out and find a dog that doesn't, but that's not the normal thing. Okay? All right, let's take a 3-minute break.
And David Sellers says dog has 3 lives.
Yeah.
David Sellers dog has 3 legs.
Well, rock on David Sellers' dog. Lesson here. All right, so we ended by looking at a deductive argument. All dogs bark. This is a dog, therefore it barks. Now, let's look at the difference between inductive arguments and deductive arguments and how we evaluate them. Inductive arguments are strong or weak. So, for example, let's go back to this cat theory. Every cat I've ever had has purred when I petted it. Probably all cats purr when petted. What if this person who made that claim has only ever had one cat? Like he's petted one cat in his life, it purred, and therefore he thinks all cats purr. Is that a very strong argument? No. But what if this guy was a cat freak and he'd had like 10,000 cats and every single one of them had purred? That's a pretty strong argument. I've pet 10,000 cats, all of them purred, therefore all cats purr. Now it's not certain, but that's pretty strong. So when we evaluate a scientific argument based on induction, we say it's either strong or weak. Now, when we evaluate deductive arguments, they are either valid or invalid. And validity doesn't mean true. Validity means the form is right. So you could actually have, and we'll get to this by the end of the semester, Lord willing, you could have an argument that has 2 premises and a conclusion, all of which are false, but if the form is right, you would say, well, that argument's valid. So deductive arguments are not strong or weak. They're not right or wrong, true or false. Deductive arguments are valid or invalid. The 2 branches of deductive reasoning are categorical and propositional logic. And in this course, we're going to study informal logic, so terms, statements, and informal fallacies. And we're going to study categorical logic, which is based on syllogisms. And we'll get to that, Lord willing, at the end of the semester. So with the introduction being done, let's continue on to lesson 1. The purposes and types of definitions. Purposes and types of definitions. So, a term is a concept that is expressed precisely in one or more words. So, if I pointed at this and said desk, I am giving this the term desk. If I said stapler, chips, computer, I'm pointing at things and I'm expressing the concept in a word. Phone, right? This is what terms are. They're concepts expressed precisely in one or more words. A term, to put it another way, is a verbal expression of an idea. Me calling this a phone doesn't make it a phone. I'm simply pointing out what it is. This is a phone. I am not creating it. I'm expressing the idea of a phone. A single term, though, can be expressed by many different words. So, for example, take the word girl. Well, or take the idea girl. Well, that's girl in English. In Spanish, puella. And then in Japanese, onananoka. All of those mean girl, but they're in different languages. They're different words, but they're all expressing the same idea. And one word can represent more than one term. So, for example, what's the definition of the word mad? Angry. But can it mean something else?
Like
Crazy. Those are the 2 words I have written down. It can mean angry and it can mean crazy. And the reason that you are coming up with different definitions is you can use that same word to describe different terms. A term is a verbal expression of an idea. We have to use words to communicate, and we communicate in terms. We take ideas and we express them verbally, and that's what a term is. Terms are verbal expressions of an idea. Terms can be expressed by different words. The idea of a young female can be expressed by the words girl, puea, or onananonoka, and one word can represent more than one term. So what are we doing with this? So what is a definition? We talk about what's the purpose and type of a definition. A definition is a statement that gives the meaning of a term. So if I said stapler, I'm using the term stapler, and you might say, define stapler. How am I going to define stapler? I'm going to give a statement that gives the meaning of a term. So today, we're going to look at the purposes of different types of definitions. There are, believe it or not, different types of definitions that we have to deal with in logic. So there are 6 purposes for definitions, and there are 5 types of definitions. Van der Noot, were you going to define stapler for me, or did you have a question? Okay.
Yeah, define stapler.
All right, so let's look at the first purpose. Here's a free hint for you. If I put something on the screen that's either in all capital letters or underlined and in bold, that's probably important. So do with that information what you will. So the first purpose of definitions is definitions show relationships. So here is I think this is from Aristotle. Here's a very old definition of man. Man is a rational animal. Okay, that's what Aristotle said a man is. What's a man? A rational animal. So what relationships does this imply that humans have? What would you say? If I define man as a rational animal, what relationships am I saying they have? Eden?
Like, we aren't very nice to each other.
So maybe saying we're not, so what relationships does that mean we have?
Not very.
Well, what types? Think about that. McKeever? Okay, so let's break it down word by word. So man is related to other rational creatures. What are some other rational creatures? Mm-mm.
Like ants and bees.
Nope. Angels, demons, and God, right? Rational creatures, able to use reason, able to use rationality. So we are related. If I define man as a rational animal, I'm showing that we have a relationship to other rational creatures, angels, demons, and God, but also that man is related to other animals, walruses, kittens, and eagles, right? So as a human being, I have a relationship with God because I'm rational like God, but I'm also an animal like walruses, kittens, and eagles. I'm a creature of God. And so when I define things like this, I'm showing the relationships that exist. So one thing that will make it a lot easier, I don't want to say your names in case your parents watch this, but if the little giggling and looking at each other could stop, this is why kids don't do well in logic, because I'm talking and you're playing a little giggle game with each other, which is super cute, I got to say, but not very effective when it comes to learning. So perhaps the 2 or 3 of you might like to reconsider the choices you're making because you want to do well. If you want to do poorly, please keep on doing what you're doing. No one else is seeing it but me, so you're the only ones whose grades are going to suffer. So make your choice accordingly. So the first purpose of definitions, they show relationships. This definition of calling man a rational animal, it ties a string between man and other stuff. It connects them. Man is connected to God. Man is connected to animals. This definition is showing the relationship between them. So that's the first purpose. The second purpose, definitions remove ambiguity. Definitions remove ambiguity. So words are ambiguous when they have more than one possible meaning. Like the word mad. McKeever said crazy. Ben said angry. They're both right because the word mad is ambiguous. It has more than one possible meaning. And so many debates and arguments come about because people are using a word that has different meanings to each person. So think of the word cool, right? So maybe Georgia is one of those weird people who loves logic class. She thinks it's so cool. Maybe Eden does not think logic class is cool like that, but she thinks that Mr. Wood keeps the temperature way too low. And so one day, Eden says, logic is the coolest class in school. And Georgia says, I know, it is the coolest class in school. Now, are they agreeing with each other? No, they don't agree with each other at all. And you can flip it around. Maybe Thomas thinks that Mr. Wood keeps the thermostat way too high. It's too hot in here. And so when Georgia says, or when Eden says, logic is the coolest class in school, Thomas says, yeah, it's really, really hot in there. But this word is ambiguous. We don't know what we mean because this word has different meanings. A definition that shows relationships and removes ambiguity by giving us a single meaning of a term is called a lexical definition. So we said there's 5 types of definitions. There's your first one, a lexical definition. So think dictionary. The dictionary definitions, kind of like the end-all authority. If you're arguing about what a word means and you open up the dictionary, that's what that word means. In other words, this is the kind of definition you'd find in a dictionary. A definition that shows relationships and removes ambiguity. So if you're keeping score out there, our first type of definition, a lexical definition, accomplishes 2 purposes. It removes ambiguity and it shows relationships. Lexical definitions remove ambiguity and show relationships. Let's go on to our third purpose. Definitions reduce vagueness. Ambiguity and vagueness are similar, but they are not the same. A term is vague when its extent is unclear. Now, here's what I mean by extent. Think of it this way. I'm driving home. Let's say my wife has been home with the kids all day, and they have been going bananas, which they are right now. They're monsters. And my wife has been pulling her hair out, trying to keep these 2 kids from killing each other. And she calls me and says, "Where are you?" And I say, "Oh, I'll be home soon." Now, when she hears soon, what does she think? Like 5 minutes. But I may mean like another hour or 2. And soon could mean an hour or 2, or it could mean 5 minutes. But if the word is vague, we don't know which one it is. And if I show up 2 hours later when I told my wife I'll be home soon, she's going to be really mad. And I'm going to tell, well, I didn't tell you I'll be home in 5. I said soon. That's a vague word. Definitions can help us reduce vagueness. So, for example, if I said I'll be home soon, what question could my wife ask? How soon? Give me a time. I'll be like, oh, 2 hours from now. Now, she may not be happy with that, but at least she knows when I'll be home. So the term may have a simple meaning, but there may be situations in which it's uncertain whether or not that term applies. Soon may not be the best word to use if I'm not going to be home for 2 hours. So think about 6 feet tall. If a person was 6 feet tall, we'd say, yeah, that's a tall man. He's 6 feet tall. But would you describe a tree that was 6 feet tall as tall? That's a pretty short tree, right? So maybe tall is not the best word, even though they're both 6 feet tall, but because they're different things, define them both as tall may not be the best word. The meaning of tall is vague. So what we need is a precising definition. So this is our second type of definition, a precising definition. We had a lexical definition. They show relationships and remove ambiguity. Our second type of definition is a precising definition. It seeks to make more precise what was previously vague or fuzzy. A precising definition. Precising definitions are not dictionary definitions. They only apply to the situation in which they are used. So think back to my example of me coming home. If I say I'll be home soon, and I mean 5 minutes, is the dictionary definition of soon when you'll be home in 5 minutes? No. It only applies in that particular situation. In this situation in my life, soon means 5 minutes. It doesn't mean 5 minutes for everyone. If we use tall to describe a man who is 6'5", tall does not now mean exactly 6'5". As if to say if you're 6'4", you're not tall because you're not 6'5". No, precising definitions only apply in the situation in which they are used. So tall is an adjective. Can you think of a noun that is a vague noun? Something for you to think about maybe as we go on. So for example, how old does a girl have to be before she's a woman? If I say I teach girls, well, how old do you have to be before I need to start calling you women? There's no dictionary definition there. So nouns can be vague too. All right, purpose number 4 of definitions. Definitions increase vocabulary. So here you go. What's the meaning of the term spanghew? This is a real word, spanghew. Anybody want to take a crack at this? Spanghew. It's up here on the board. I'm going to tell you what it means. Come on, give me a funny guess. What does it mean, Jefferson? Yeah. A type of spaghetti. Okay. Anybody else want to give me a good definition of spanghew? McKeever and then Vandernoot.
Is it not the grocery store that SpongeBob goes to?
Okay.
Is it some sort of a Eastern?
Here is the literal. This is true. This is a real word, and this is the dictionary definition. Spanghew means to violently throw a frog from the end of a stick. That's what it means to spanghew. Okay, well, guess what? Your vocabulary just grew. Congratulations. So here's our third type of definition, a stipulative definition. And that's a definition given to a brand new, just invented word or to an existing word applied in a new way. So think of a word like laptop. 30 years ago, no one knew what a laptop was. It didn't exist. When we invented laptop, now you know what a laptop is. Or think about words like cool. 100 years ago, cool was only used in reference to the temperature. Now cool is almost never used in reference to temperature. Those are stipulative definitions. We're giving a definition to a word that's either brand new, like laptop, or a word that's being used in a new way, like cool. So blog. You all know what a blog is. 20 years ago, that wasn't a word. If I told my mom, Google it, which I always do, my mom will text me on her smartphone and ask me to look something up. And I'll just be like, Google it. You have a phone right there. Right? But Google it. Imagine me going back 20 years ago and telling somebody, hey, go Google it. They'd be like, what'd you say? You want to fight? You just told me to Google it? Like, what does that even mean? Right? Tweet. What did tweet mean 20 years ago? A bird. If I tell you don't tweet, you're not going to think don't chirp. You're going to think, oh, I shouldn't have Twitter, which you shouldn't because Twitter is awful. But these are stipulative definitions. Purpose 5, definitions can explain concepts theoretically. So sometimes we give a definition not because we don't know what the word means, but because we're trying to understand the term a little bit better. So for example, one day you'll have chemistry and your teacher's going to say, water is H2O. He's not trying to increase your vocabulary. You know what H2 and O mean. He's trying to explain the atomic structure of water. He's trying to help you understand water a little bit better, a little bit deeper. These are theoretical definitions. So here's your fourth type definition, a theoretical definition, a definition given to a term that is not understood, usually scientific or philosophical. So for example, if I defined man as an evolved ape, what theory am I saying I believe in? Evolution. And so if I accept the theory, like if I said to McKeever, man is an evolved ape, and McKeever says, you're right, Mr. Wood, then McKeever has just now accepted the theory of evolution because he's accepted my definition. If you accept a theoretical definition, you accept the theory behind it. Yes? Stipulative. So we've got lexical, we've got precising, we've got stipulative, we've got theoretical, and then our sixth type right here. Yes, Ben?
What did the first one do? Lexical? It
reduces ambiguity and shows relationships. All right, sixth purpose and fifth type of definition. Purpose number 6, definitions can influence attitudes. So if I went up and asked a Democrat, what is abortion? They're going to likely say a woman's right to choose. But if I asked a conservative Christian, what is abortion? They're going to say something like abortion is the slaughter of innocent children. And what both these people are trying to do is by defining abortion a particular way, they are trying to influence your attitude. They're trying to change how you think. The person who says abortion is the slaughter of innocent children, what do they want you to think about abortion? It's bad. The person who said abortion is the right of a woman to control her own body, what do they want you to think about abortion? It's good. And this is a persuasive definition. Persuasive definitions are definitions that aim at persuading the listener one way or another toward the term being defined. So if I said school, is a place where children are enlightened and trained in the ways of the world. Well, that must mean I really like school. Or if I said, school is a place where we torture kids for 8 hours a day. That's maybe how you would define school, because you don't like it. So I'm going to hand out your first homework assignment. Hold on one second.